UFC Fight Night Vegas 66, Cannonier versus Strickland takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting straight away with the early prelim opener of Sergey Morozov versus Journey Newson. I am going to be going with Sergey Morozov here to start off the card. Journey Newson, he's good, he's powerful. He looked okay in his last fight against Fernie Garcia, but Sergey Morozov, I think, is a little bit too big and too strong for him. And Journey Newson is a little bit too small for the bantamweight division. I believe he's 5'5" for the bantamweight division. I can just see Sergey Morozov running a little bit of a grappling clinic on him. Now, I do worry a little bit about Morozov's chin, because Journey Newson has got power in his hands, and we've seen that before. And Sergey Morozov in his last few fights, I mean, he got hurt by Julian, and he also got really badly hurt multiple times by Douglas Silva de Andrade. But Douglas Silva de Andrade is no joke. Julian is pretty good. His record says so, at least. And I think Sergey Morozov's going to be able to get this one done using his grappling. He was able to do that against Julian. I reckon he'll be able to do it against Journey Newson, who's just a little bit of a small guy for the division. I know Pava is as well, because he used to be a flyweight, but even he's got a bigger frame than Journey Newson. I'm going to trust in Sergey Morozov to implement his grappling game on Newson, although I do worry about his chin. But bantamweight, I'm not looking for any consistent one-punch KO guy in the bantamweight division. So I'm going to side with Morozov here rather than risk picking the KO win from Newson. Morozov gets it done. We move on. Up the card, David Dvorak versus Manel Kape. I'm going to be going with Manel Kape here over David Dvorak. David Dvorak, why is this on the early prelims? This should be on the main card. I think this should be on the main card. It's not like Manel Kape hasn't got name value. He's got a lot of followers. But either way, I think Manel Kape's going to get this one done. He should have beaten Matheus Nicolau, and that win on short notice, on less than ideal notice, because he just lost Alejandro Pantoja the month before, and he stepped up and took on Matheus Nicolau a month later and lost a split decision. He should have won that fight, and Matheus Nicolau's been on a roll since then. I just don't really believe in David Dvorak as much as I do Manel Kape. He looked great against Ismagulov, finished him in the first round with punches, finished Ode Osborne as well, and Ode Osborne and Zalgas are guys who make it real close with the lower guys in the flyweight division, so they're not bums. Zalgas Ismagulov arguably could be on a win streak right now if the judges had a pair of eyes. David Dvorak, though, I just don't believe in him the same way. I wasn't too impressed by his performance against Matheus Nicolau. It was very close, I get that, but he just didn't seem as good as Manel Kape did, and I think Manel Kape's going to improve massively as well from that. He's only 29 for the flyweight division as well. Younger guy. I reckon a little bit more explosive, a little bit higher finishing potential as well, and he does good on the outside where Dvorak does a lot of his work. So I'm going to lean towards Manel Kape over David Dvorak here by 29-28 decision, maybe 30-27. We move on. Up the card, Bryan Battle versus Rinat Fakhretdinov. I'm going with Rinat Fakhretdinov. I know a lot of people are picking Bryan Battle, and I agree. He does look pretty promising as a guy from the contenders, as a guy from the Ultimate Fighter. But Rinat Fakhretdinov is, watching what he did to Andreas Michailidis in that fight, and just, I think it was 13 minutes of control time in a 15-minute fight, just ragdolling him. And also, it's not like the game plan's hidden here. He was literally in a wrestling match 2 months ago at Wolnik League 8 against Igor Latoshik in a freestyle wrestling match. He went out there and made the guy retire at the end of the second round. So I believe in Rinat. He's got ability on the feet as well to make him dangerous enough to where Battle's not going to have an easy time on the feet thinking about the takedown. Of course, he got that massive KO win over Eric Spicely on UAE Warriors, which got him signed to the UFC. And he's fought good opponents. Alberto Uda's no joke. Used to be in the UFC himself. Of course, didn't have the best of career in the UFC, but, he lost to Vettori in his career and an in-shape Collier at middleweight as well. But Rinat is a dangerous guy. He's fought good opponents recently, and I believe in his wrestling here. Bryan Battle took it on short notice as well. There's not a lot in the favour of Bryan Battle, and I don't understand why the majority of people are picking him. I really don't understand that, to be honest with you. Bryan Battle's got good takedown defense, but I don't. I get it. He beat Petrosky with the choke, and he did good on the Ultimate Fighter, and He's got good submission ability, but I think this is just a different level of inbreeding we're dealing with here. And I know, look at, Bryan Battle's face, you could suggest the same thing, but Rinat Fakhretdinov, it's a long surname. That's a different level of grappling that I think he's going to be running into here. And I reckon he's going to get the job done. And he's had a full camp. He was training for Michael Morales, who's got a similar sort of like floaty style on the feet anyway to Bryan Battle. I just reckon that Bryan Battle's not going to be as prepared as he wants to be in there. And I think maybe he's just trying to get a little bit of a paycheck before Christmas. Am I wrong? I don't know. Sometimes these fighters make these decisions that are against their best interest. I could see him just looking to get back in there before Christmas. Make a little bit of an extra paycheck. Why not? He's not going to lose stock. He took it on short notice. And it's Rinat Fakhretdinov. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Rafa Garcia versus Maheshate. This is a great fight. I'm going Rafa Garcia here. I'm going against the people again. People are picking Maheshate. I know he beat Steve Garcia by KO. And we big up Steve Garcia because of how great he looked against Chase Hooper. But it's Chase Hooper. I'm going against people quite a bit here early on. A lot of people are picking Maheshate. I believe in him a little bit. But this is like... Rafa Garcia's no joke. His last fight, sure, he's coming off a loss. And you can say he's coming off a loss. But Drakkar Klose is a good top 25 level lightweight in the UFC. And Rafa Garcia made that a really close fight with him. And he did very well. Now, he lost some fights earlier on to Nasrat Haqparast and Chris Gruttishmacher as well, and he wasn't really looking too good in those fights, but then he turned it round. A win over Natan Levy's not looking too bad. Levy just won his last fight. Jesse Ronson, he melted him, choked him out in the second round, and I'm looking at Maheshate's career. I'm not seeing a lot of good opponents. He's very young, and I hate to do this, but I don't know. I hate to do this, but these Eastern guys from the Eastern Hemisphere, a little bit further than East, from the way Eastern Hemisphere, the Eastern part, the wrestling is always a bit of a worry for me. And Rafa Garcia can grapple if he needs to, and he's tough. And it's not like Maheshate's KOing everyone. Like, he took a guy who was 11-12 to a decision. He took a guy who was 10-15 to a decision. So it's not like an 100% KO rate here. He took a guy on the Contender Series to a very patient decision where no takedowns were shot by either guy. I think Rafa Garcia putting the pressure on with a good chin, mixing up the grappling. I think he could upset Maheshate here and get the job done. He might even be the favourite, even though people are picking against it. And also, he lost to a grappler as well earlier on at M1. Like, the one time he went over to M1, he lost to an 0-1 guy, Goncharov. I'm going to go with Rafa Garcia here, putting the pressure on and getting himself either a late round submission or a decision win, mixing in that grappling. Moving on, up the card to another fight, Said Nurmagomedov versus Saiyokub Kakhramanov. I'm going against him again. I'm looking at these percentages, 79% for Said Nurmagomedov. I'm going Saiyokub Kakhramanov here. Younger, I believe more dangerous, and I think Said is really, he's beat some good opponents recently, I understand. And the win against Cody Stamen's a good win, I get that, but he looked really like he was slowing down a lot against Douglas Silva de Andrade. And Andrade got the one takedown that he shot for in that fight as well and was able to stuff all of the takedowns of Said Nurmagomedov. And I remember a fight that he had recently with Raoni Barcelos. And he really slowed down in that fight. And Raoni Barcelos was able to get onto top position, go for an arm triangle, and really start to put pressure on him on that fight. Even though maybe Said did more strikes on the feet, Raoni was able to kind of get the better of him in certain grappling exchanges. And I really do believe in Saiyokub Kakhramanov. I've watched a fight with Umar Nurmagomedov a lot of times, and he held his own against Umar Nurmagomedov, who's no joke himself. And I'd say a better Nurmagomedov than Said. Similar though, similar. Said is a very good fighter. I just don't like the cardio of him. I keep seeing him slow down. I'm spitting everywhere here. I keep seeing him slow down. And Saiyokub has a really good pace. We saw that in his last fight against Ronnie Lawrence. 10 for 16 on takedowns over the fight. Constantly drowning Ronnie Lawrence, who can scramble himself. I can just see Saiyokub drowning Said Nurmagomedov as the fight goes on. And getting himself an upset for a 29-28 decision is what I'm going to go for here. Plus, he's so young, 27 years of age. already holding up against some of these talented prospects the way he is, and beating guys like Ronnie Lawrence, like he's only going to get better from there, whereas Saeed is already 30. So I'm thinking we're seeing the best of Saeed. We don't know where Saiyokub could go. So I'm going to go with Saiyokub Kakhramanov via an extra Yakub to his name. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Julian Marquez versus Deron Winn. Deron loss is going to take another one. Julian Marquez gets this one done. I agree with the people here. Yeah, Julian Marquez gets it done, I reckon. I don't believe in Deron Winn as a fighter. I don't think he's taken his career seriously. How could he? Fighting in the middleweight division as the shape that he is. He's not taking his career seriously. I honestly think he went to AKA, fell in love with DC and wanted to be DC when he's not DC. Doesn't have the boxing, doesn't have the chin, doesn't have the wrestling level. He's in no way anywhere near the level of DC. And couldn't really do much to Darren Stewart. Couldn't do anything to Maheshate. Got submitted there as well. Lost a wrestling match at Wrestling Underground as well against Colin Moore. He's good wrestler. But, beat Antonio Arroyo, who literally had like a wide open hole in his game when it came to wrestling. And then got so badly beaten up by Phil Hawes. I don't like that. And then you look at Marquez, who beat Phil Hawes. I know they're like sloppy fighters, and Marquez is going to find a way sometimes, so you can't use MMA algebra there, but I'm leaning towards Marquez being able to stuff those takedowns. He took a lot of damage in his last fight as well against Gregory Rodriguez, though, but Deron Winn took a different level of damage, and that's saying something because Marquez did take a lot, but I just don't see Deron Winn being the same after that fight. I think Marquez is going to find a way to find some kind of choke on Deron Winn. He has a few anaconda choke, front choke finishes. I'll go anaconda choke, front choke, dash choke, something along those lines that he lands on Deron Winn as the fight goes on, and he gets that submission win. We move on up the card. Jake Matthews versus Matt Semelsberger. No brainer. Jake Matthews wins this fight. I like Matt Semelsberger. I think he looks cool, and I'd like to see him do well in the UFC because of it. I don't know why they've made this fight. I was honestly thinking after Jake Matthews' last performance, hey, Randy Brown at worst in terms of opponents they'd put him against. Maybe Daniel Rodriguez, maybe Mikel Pereira, maybe Neil Magny. Like, I was thinking ranked names for Jake Matthews. Semelsberger's bottom of the barrel-ish. Like, he's just above the bottom level guys. Like, he can beat the Jason Witts, the Carlton Minuses, the Martin Sanos that shouldn't even be in the UFC, and turn back the clock on an AJ Fletcher and beat him as he's trying to make a name for himself. But that win over AJ Fletcher don't look too good because it's not like AJ Fletcher bounced back. He lost again to Angelusa. So, yeah. I know Alex Morono's good, and Semelsberger had his moment, and maybe he will have a moment here as well. But I just think Jake Matthews has hit a different level in his career now. And unlike Alex Morono doesn't, Matthews will mix in grappling quite a bit. And let's not forget, Jake Matthews has some underrated wins on his resume. I know people don't really think about it. He beat Li Jingliang in 2018. He's been around for a long time, a very long time. Like, he lost to Sean Brady in the grappling, I get that, but I think his hands have really come together now. Like, let's say this. In 2020, he took Diego Sanchez to a decision. This version of Jake Matthews, if he fought Diego Sanchez in 2020, he'd finish him in the first round. No way around it. His hands looked so crisp against Andre Fialho, and he even said in the build-up he's been working on his boxing, and I believe him. He took a long time off, made it happen. I reckon he's going to go out there and box up Matt Semelsberger and win a 30-27 decision. I reckon Semelsberger will tough it out and make it a scrap, but I think Matthews is just a different level to Semelsberger, and he'll get this one done across the decision. We move on. Up the card. Cheyanne Vlismas versus Cory Mckenna. I'm going to go Cory Mckenna. I think Vlismas is going to have a stand-up advantage, but I do think Cory Mckenna is going to be able to out-grapple her, though. She looked good against Miranda Granger. I know she lost to Elise Reed, and that doesn't look too good whatsoever, but she was still able to get her takedowns there. I just think Cory Mckenna needs to realize that she's a grappler, and I think she needs to go to that massively in this fight because Vlismas does have really good stand-up and good boxing, and she's good at that type of stuff. But I didn't like her loss to Montserrat Ruiz. To me, it was only a year ago as well, a year and a half ago. That showed me that she had like a massive hole in her knowledge of grappling, in all honesty. A massive, massive gap in grappling knowledge. The way she got dealt with by Montserrat with over and over and over again, head and arm throws pretty much, and just had no answer for it the entire fight long. Like, that just tells me there's just a part of her game that she's never even, like, developed and worked on. She's got good boxing, an okay takedown defense against low-level fighters, but I don't know about against someone who actually knows how to grapple, like Cory Mckenna, who knows her jiu-jitsu, who just got a Von Flue choke as well in one of her recent fights, I believe. I reckon she's going to get this one done, and actually I think she's going to submit Cheyanne Vlismas at one point in the first 2 rounds. I just think she'll be able to out-grapple her. And even on the feet, Vlismas will be thinking about the takedown too much, and she won't be able to do too much on the feet either. So I'm going with Cory Mckenna. We move on. Up the card. Cody Brundage versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. I'm going with Michal Oleksiejczuk here over Cody Brundage. Again, another hidden young veteran of the game that you don't really consider a vet. Michal Oleksiejczuk's been doing this for a long time, and he's 27. You know, and I like Cody Brundage, but I'm going to say something here. Sure, he's explosive, and he's almost like a bit of a Chandler of the middleweight division. There's a little bit of fluke factor to his wins, I think. You know, like, he gets a win over Gore. He wasn't doing too great early on, but he landed that straight right hand, put him out, finished him off on the ground. He's explosive and he's got power, I get it. But he was getting beaten up badly by Doucher, and that don't look good because Doucher don't win against anyone, or even look good at any point against anyone. And he ended up finding the guillotine there, and he is explosive and dangerous. I just don't see him finishing Michal Oleksiejczuk. I don't see him at that level. So I'm going to trust in Michal Oleksiejczuk, who looks very crisp recently on the feet in his career. Had a loss by decision to Dustin Jacoby, but that's no shame there. You know, Dustin Jacoby's really, really good on the feet and should have actually got his win over Khalil Roundtree. Speaking of wins over Khalil Roundtree, Michal Oleksiejczuk out-wrestled and dominated him in 2017. Popped for a banned supplement or something like that. Came back in 2019, whooped up Volante, whooped up Ismagulov as well. Lost to OSP and Krut. Made a massive mistake against OSP and got subbed after winning early on. And then got ragdolled by Krut, who's great. Beat Bakauskas, but then didn't look good there. But then he started to really up the game. Amazing against Shamil Gamzatov. Absolutely amazing against Shamil Gamzatov. Looked good against Jacoby even in a loss. And looked amazing against Alvey as well. I know it's Alvey, but Alvey took Ryan's ban to a split decision. So, plus, Brundage is taking this on short notice. Michal Oleksiejczuk was training for Duraev. Brundage is a bit of a wrestler as well. I think he's going to be more prepared than Brundage is. And again, I think this is Brundage trying to get another paycheck before the end of the year. I do. And I don't think this is going to be his best prepared self. I know he's supposed to fight Vieira in November, and that got delayed. But jumping into this fight, when Michal Oleksiejczuk has been prepared for this date the entire time against a similar opponent to you. Vieira isn't Oleksiejczuk, whereas I could find a few similarities between Duraev and Brundage. So I think Oleksiejczuk's more prepared, more dangerous, and I think you'll find that KO in the first round. We move on up the card. Drew Dober versus Bobby Green. People are picking Dober. People are really picking Dober. I'm going to go Bobby Green. I can't see Dober finishing him. I don't know. I just can't see it. I think Green's really good at not being... I'll say this. I think Fiziev's just a better version of Dober. And Green nearly beat Fiziev. In some people's eyes, he beat him. Like, this isn't like a good matchup for Dober, I don't think. And maybe Dober will find that body shot. Maybe he'll be too tough and land a big KO blow. But I think Bobby Green, at his best, beats Drew Dober all day. I think style-wise, keeping it to straight punches and keeping himself at range. First of all, I love the matchup. I've been waiting for this for a long time. It's one of those matchups where you see them next to each other in the rankings for so long, and it never happens, and then finally it's here. Green's got a bit of a reach advantage, a bit of a height advantage as well, a bit of a frame advantage in general. And I'm just thinking about what he did to Nasrat Haqparast. I know Dober KO'd him, but Green schooled him on the feet. Absolutely schooled him. I'm going to go with Bobby Green here. I think Drew Dober's going to get peppered up a little bit too much. Bobby Green's going to start feeling himself, talking to Dober a bit. And I think Dober's too much of a nice guy, and maybe he won't react well to Bobby Green taunting him on the feet and talking to him and popping him in the face and swelling up his eyes, swelling up his nose. I'm going to go with Bobby Green getting this one done. via decision, 29-28. Dober does well, lands big shots, has big moments, has good shots and combo moments against the cage, but I'm leaning towards Bobby Green here. I am. I really am. I think he's very good. And I think Fiziev, again, is a better version of Dober. In all honesty, I do. Because Riddell got by Dober in a similar fight style that Fiziev got by Riddell. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that food chain of short, stocky striker for the lightweight division, and Green looked so good against Fiziev and took a whole bunch of shots from him and didn't feel him. So I'm going Bobby Green gets this one done over Dober, 29-28 or 30-27. We move on in a fight of the night, though. Alex Caceres versus Julian Erosa. Maybe I shouldn't have said fight of the night. I'll go Julian Erosa. I think it's time to stop doubting him as a fighter. Alex Caceres is also a guy that you shouldn't really want to be doubting too much either. But I don't see him finishing Erosa. And I think you kind of have to finish Erosa at this point, right? You kind of have to finish him. And I know Caceres looked good against Yusuf, which is dangerous. Which is good to look good against a guy like Yusuf. But I think Erosa's pace and pressure mixed with his wrestling background, I don't see him getting submitted by Caceres. And I also don't see him getting KO'd. So that pace and pressure, I think eventually will make Alex Caceres will. And he's vegan. And Erosa goes to the body a lot with knees, with punches in the clinch. And Caceres is vegan. And Erosa goes to the body a lot. I like this matchup for Erosa. And if you want to look back in Erosa's career recently, underrated wins. Hakeem Dawodu, he beat him and beat him very dominantly as well. Like, it wasn't a close fight. He beat Steven Peterson. He took that fight on short notice. Didn't look good. But that's sometimes what can fucking happen with these styles. But he looked good before then as well against Charles Jourdain. He just beat him up and melted him. You know, against Sungwoo Choi, he got caught. I get it. So did Caceres, but there was an illegal knee. So that got all prevented. But then, like, he just beat up Nate Landwehr and finished him in the first round. I just think the finishing potential is on the side of Julian Erosa. And I think he'll be able to melt Caceres as the fight goes on with body shots and eventually finish him in the third round somehow. So I'm going to go with a third round finish for Julian Erosa, or maybe like a decision based on the later rounds. I just think he'll be able to push a pace and not worry about too much of a finishing potential from Caceres, who I think is going to try and picket him at range. Because Erosa's got too good of grappling to get subbed, and I don't see him getting KO'd by Caceres, who's vegan. So non-vegan Julian Erosa gets this one done. Moving on up the card, Amir Albazi versus give me a second here. Jesus, I'm completely lost. Amir Albazi versus Alessandro Costa. I'm going Amir Albazi. Going Amir Albazi. I don't know. This is one of them. It's weird to go from like some really compelling fights. Like, Alessandro Costa's good, but you're going to beat Amir Albazi, a guy who's looking absolutely fucking dominant in the flyweight division on very short notice, stepping up here. Like, you're a good fighter, I get it. 26 years of age, 12-2, beat some decent opponents, beat a good guy on the Contender Series who was 12-0, 10-2 opponent, 12-5, 8-2 opponent. I just don't see him beating Amir Albazi on short notice. That's too much of an ask. Okay, I don't blame him for taking this because now he's in the UFC, and I think maybe he could beat some bottom-level guys in the UFC. I get that, but man, Amir Albazi has been doing things to people, like ragdolls Figueiredo's brother and chokes him out. Beats Zhalgas Ismagulov convincingly. Chokes out Malcolm Gordon, which shouldn't be a great win, but Gordon's been doing pretty decent, so it is somehow a great win. And Triangle chokes him in the first round. Like, he's just been looking really good. And his only loss is to Jose Torres, who is one of the best flyweights outside of the UFC, and is now doing his thing at Brave Fighting Championship and still winning fights. And I wish the UFC would sign him back. ATT fighter. Only lost to Alex Perez in the UFC once, trying to scrap with him early on. Like, he's beaten great fighters. Blaine O'Driscoll. He beat a 13-2 opponent in his recent fight as well. It's between him and another guy who fought for the UFC that arguably could have beaten Davison Figueiredo at one point. The best flyweights outside the UFC. So I'm going to go Amir Albazi. I trust in him. I think he'll be able to find the submission against Alessandro Costa, who is good, but he's not Amir Albazi, and he ain't beating him on short notice. when Amir Albazi was training for first Alex Perez, then Brandon Royval, and now he's got this guy coming in on short notice. I've got about Albazi. We move on up the card. Arman Tsarukyan versus Damir Ismagulov. I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan here over Damir Ismagulov. 3-rounder, I think, is very good for Arman. He did slow down quite a bit against Gamrot, but I don't think Damir can push that pace that Gamrot can, and I don't think he's going to be able to in a 3-rounder anyway. And Graham Kutateledze is very good. But let's face it, Arman beat Gamrot. He did. He beat Gamrot in their fight, and they took the fight from him. It was a very close fight, but it was a close fight that he won. You know what I mean? And he's been working on his grappling recently. I like seeing that from him. You know what I mean? I think Arman Tsarukyan's going to get this one done, though. I do. Body shots with the kicks. Damir Ismagulov with that tweak. Keeps his hands up real high as well. I can see with that higher guard, with those straight punches that he goes for, I can just see Arman Tsarukyan sliding that lead switch kick to the body on him so many times. And I think that will take an effect as the fight goes on. And I don't think Damir has the option to take him to the ground as much and as effectively as Mateusz Gamrot does. Damir can grapple, but he doesn't have the ability of Gamrot in the offensive grappling. And yeah, I think the Graham fight kind of showed that a bit as well. So I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan. He can throw that lead switch kick to the body without as much fear of being taken down as he would have to against Gamrot, who was trying to catch it and take him down with it. So I think that's going to make him a little bit more okay to do what he needs to do on the feet. And I think he's just a little higher fight IQ as well. And also, Damir took a lot of damage in his last fight against Graham Kutateledze. It was a very close fight as well. And Garam's a scrapper, a brawler, you know? So it kind of played into Damir's game, keeping him off with 1-2s and straight punches and good combos. Whereas you've got guys that are a bit, you know, more delicate on the outside and more effective on the outside. I think they give him a bit more of a problem. So I'm going to side with Arman Tsarukyan here. Plus, he's 26. Just turned 26 years of age. He's got so much time to improve. I just think he has the advantages here going into this fight. And a 3-rounder, so I don't have to worry about him gassing, and he doesn't have to worry about that either. There's a lot less for him to worry about in Damir Ismagulov's game than there is for Damir Ismagulov to worry about in Arman Tsarukyan's game. That's all I'll say. I think that's an advantage. We move on. Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland. I think we're all in agreement here. Well, maybe not. 59% in favour of Cannonier. I'm going with Jared Cannonier over Sean Strickland. I don't think Strickland is an elite level middleweight. I think he's an anti-grappling god. In all honesty, I think he's got, for a guy who doesn't even drill it too much, he's got weirdly good counter-grappling. We've seen it against Jack Hermansson. We've seen it against Krzysztof Jotko. We've seen it against Brendan Allen as well. He's got really good counter-grappling, and he can stuff a takedown if he wants to. But this is a dangerous fight on the feet for him. This is a very dangerous fight on the feet for him. I can see him getting scrappy with Cannonier, and Cannonier just planting one on his chin. I think this will go past the first round. I think it will go into the second round. I think they'll start getting comfortable. They'll start swinging. And I think that's where Strickland will find his chin up in the air. And Cannonier will find a way to land on that chin. I believe in Jared Cannonier here. Landing that big KO blow. And look at the way they both dealt with Hermansson and stuff like that. Sean Strickland's good, but he's just so basic on the feet. And he's very easy to read. You know, you're not going to catch him with many straight punches. But those shots around the guard, I don't know, dude. The shots around the guard and around the hand that he's chucking out there in front of you, I think Cannonier's going to have an easy time finding that chin the same way Pereira did. Of course, not in the same fashion, but I reckon eventually in the second round he'll find that shot. If he can find it on a Kelvin Gastelum and put him down, I think you can put out a guy like Sean Strickland. And also, I think Strickland's kind of open for those leg kicks as well. So, Cannonier was using really good leg kicks against Robert Whittaker and had a really good fight with Robert Whittaker and cracked Robert Whittaker and hurt him and showed toughness and fought with one arm for a moment in that fight. You know what I mean? Like, Cannonier's not a bad fighter because he lost to Israel Adesanya. Like, he's one of the top guys. I honestly think right now at middleweight, it's Adesanya Pereira in their bubble. Pereira might lose to a bunch of other guys, but I think it's Adesanya in terms of contenders and Whittaker. Adesanya and Whittaker at the top. And then Cannonier's right there underneath him so far from what I'm seeing. That's all I'm seeing right now. in the middleweight division. I think Cannonier is the next best guy as a contender in middleweight outside of Whittaker and Adesanya. And I think Strickland, just too basic, too readable. I know Cannonier's getting old, and maybe Strickland could pop him and swell up his face and break an orbital, and it could change the fight, but I'm definitely going to be going with Jared Cannonier, who I believe also has a reach advantage. Yes, he does, to work with. I'm going with Jared Cannonier. Plus, he's shorter, so Strickland's going to be standing taller, and it leaves his chin open a bit more for those hooks over the top of the jabs and twos that he throws. Goodbye, Toodle Pip. See you later. Yeah. Jared Cannonier, round 2. KO victory. What a card this is, though. What an amazing card this is, really. This is a phenomenal card. Top to bottom, stacked with really good fights. A great way to end the year. It's sad that this is ending the year, because I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, but this is a great card. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.